If someone tells you that they just spent the whole afternoon wearing a snorkel and flippers diving in a muddy swamp, then went home and feasted on a pile of baked beans on toast, there's a good chance they are English. In this land, people don't need to resolve conflicts through arguments. They leave behind notes full of sarcasm. The English don't need a laundry room because the washing machine must stand next to the oven to be in the right order. England is not just a country, it is a separate planet with gloriously illogical rules. Why are red telephone booths, which no one uses, preserved like treasures? Why is queue jumping considered a social death sentence? The following 15 quirks will take you from one shock to another, proving that you can take a Brit out of Britain, but you can never separate the kettle from their soul. Prepare a cup of tea, because this journey will be quite mind-boggling. Welcome to Cooper's Hill in Gloucestershire, where the survival instinct takes a backseat to a cheese wheel. If you think sports have to be football or tennis, the English define it by throwing themselves down a steep, rugged slope in the faint hope of catching a nearly 4-kilogram double Gloucester cheese. The most shocking point of this festival lies in the fact that the cheese wheel, when released from the top of the hill, can reach a terrifying speed of up to 110 kilometers per hour. As soon as this flying object takes off, dozens of participants will literally turn themselves into human balls, rolling, tumbling, and bouncing down the hill in a futile effort to catch up with it. In reality, the laws of physics always favor the piece of cheese, and almost no one can catch up to it before crossing the finish line. However, glory will belong to the first person who crawls to the finish line, covered in mud and sometimes with a few scratches, to receive the reward of the very cheese curd they nearly risked their life to pursue. This madness is actually an ancient tradition that has been steadfastly maintained for centuries, despite all medical warnings and efforts to prevent it from the authorities. To the world, this is an illogical act. For the English, this is a legacy. If you see a crowd cheering as someone just somersaults 20 times in the air for a block of curd, don't be surprised. It's just a regular Monday in Gloucestershire. If there is one thing that makes tourists in England freeze for a few seconds in the bathroom, it is the contradictory pair of taps, one side boiling hot, the other ice cold, and they never meet, while the whole world has moved on to convenient mixer taps. The British stubbornly cling to this division as a gamble every time they wash their face. The formation of this system is not because the English like to make things difficult for themselves, but rather a legacy from the Victorian era. At that time, cold water was drawn directly from a clean and drinkable source, while hot water was stored in an old tank in the attic, which was an ideal breeding ground for bacteria and debris. To prevent this dirty water from flowing back into the clean water system, the law mandates that the two water streams must be completely separated. Nowadays, even though the plumbing system has become much more modern, the British still maintain this practice as a point of pride in their cultural heritage. Using them is like a skill challenge. You have to fill a basin with water to mix, or make quick swipes between the two taps to seek warmth in vain. For the British, this is not an inconvenience. It is a reminder of history. A cultural experience they call gloriously illogical. Sati. Imagine you are hosting a romantic dinner for friends with candles and flowers, when suddenly, right under the kitchen shelf, a metal monster starts roaring and shaking violently as if it wants to take off into the sky. Don't panic. It's not an earthquake, just the washing machine entering the spin cycle. This awkward presence is a real culture shock for those coming from the US or Australia, where laundry is always isolated in separate utility rooms, but in England, especially in houses built before the 1980s, space is a luxury. When space does not allow for a separate laundry room, the kitchen becomes the most suitable option because it is the only place in the house that combines two essential elements: a strong drainage system and a high-power electrical source. The result is a rather ironic symbiosis. You are frying eggs while washing socks. Although mixing the scent of fabric softener with the smell of steak may not seem very aesthetic. For the English, It is part of the familiar home landscape. They are so used to having to shout to talk whenever the washing machine is running. A somewhat chaotic arrangement in terms of functionality, but extremely reasonable in terms of economics and architecture in the land of fog. In most places around the world, watching TV only costs you electricity or cable fees. But in the UK, you need an actual license to be allowed to watch live television. This is one of the most confusing concepts for foreigners. TV license. This fee, around £159 per year, is essentially the main source of funding to maintain the operations of the national broadcaster, the BBC. The British accept paying for a television service that is ad-free, not influenced by commercial forces, and has content quality that meets royal standards. However, the peculiarity lies in the enforcement method. If you own a TV and watch live broadcasts without paying the fee, you are breaking the law and could face hefty fines. The peculiarity also lies in the legends about detective vans roaming the streets to find out which houses are watching TV illegally. Whether this technology is truly effective remains a big question, but the presence of stern reminder letters delivered right to the doorstep has become a part of popular culture. For the world, this seems like a peculiar tax, but for the British, it is the price to preserve the voice of the nation in its purest form. If an English person walks past you and asks, "You all right?" don't be foolish enough to stop and list your back pain symptoms or recount your terrible day. This is one of the classic traps of the communication culture in the land of fog, although grammatically, this is a health inquiry. In reality, it is just a variation of hi or hello. The British use it as a way to acknowledge your presence while still maintaining the necessary privacy and distance. The most appropriate response is usually to nod slightly and ask the same question back. Yeah, you, or simply just, all right. If you actually start talking about having a cold or having trouble with your boss, you'll see the other person clearly look embarrassed, because they have just unintentionally opened a therapy session that they had no intention of participating in. A brief, formal greeting, short and cautiously friendly, is the essence here. While the whole world considers ceramic tiles or granite the gold standard for the wettest place in the house, the British made a decision that goes underground, carpeting the bathroom floor. This is not a tiny bath mat, but rather a carpet that roots from the corner of the toilet to the foot of the bathtub. This quirk is not a hygiene abuse preference, but a survival strategy from the 70s. In old, drafty houses lacking modern underfloor heating, stepping barefoot onto the cold tiles on a gloomy winter morning is a torment. A thick carpet is the lifesaver that brings immediate warmth. Even today, the combination of humidity, standing water, and shaggy carpets sounds like a mold cultivation lab. But for many British families, the feeling of softness underfoot is still more important than any logical argument. Imagine a country dedicating a whole night of the year to lighting bonfires, setting off grand fireworks, and burning effigies just to commemorate an event. A guy named Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament along with the King, but failed. Instead of erasing the memory of a dark conspiracy, the English chose to turn it into an exciting outdoor festival. On November 5th each year, the streets of England light up to remind each other of the gunpowder plot of 1605. Children will run around with sparklers in hand, while adults gather around a huge bonfire, sipping hot drinks and chanting the timeless nursery rhyme. Remember the 5th of November. The most interesting point is that they meticulously create Guy Fawkes' effigies out of straw and old clothes to throw into the fire. This is a celebration that is both ironic and unique. They celebrate because the plot failed, because the country remains peaceful, and most importantly, because they still have the National Assembly to complain and criticize every day. If there were a ranking of the most patient nations on the planet, the British would surely take the top spot with their specialty, sport. Queuing. In this land, queuing is not merely standing in line, it is a moral standard. A set of unwritten rules more complex than the rules of cricket. Whether at a bus station, a cafe, or even in a chaotic situation, the British will automatically form a straight line with a distance measured to the exact centimetre. Never foolishly test their patience by cutting in line, as it is considered an act of self-disgrace in the eyes of the public. The English will never raise their voices or push you. That would be too rude and lacking in restraint. Instead, you will have to endure a storm of silent pressure, indignant tuts, dramatic sighs, and a barrage of daggers aimed straight at the back of your neck. Here, breaking the rules is a sentence of expulsion from the community of kindness, making you feel guiltier than any administrative punishment. Never confuse a bustling bar with a pub, short for the traditional English public house. Here, the boundary between public space and private home almost completely disappears. If Americans have basements for entertainment, then the English have the local, the pub at the end of the alley, where they can wear sweatpants, flip-flops, and step into a space as familiar as their own kitchen. The atmosphere inside the pub is enveloped by polished black oak beams, a ceiling so low that taller individuals must bow their heads, and a distinctive scent that blends traditional ale beer with ancient old wood. The most surprising aspect for visitors is its family-friendly nature. You will see dogs sleeping peacefully under the tables and children eating chips while their parents sip their afternoon beers. No need for flashing colored lights or blaring music. The pub is a place where people meet to banter or simply sit quietly together by the fireplace. This is the community's energy charging station, where the server will call your name as soon as you step through the door, turning it into a true communal lounge, warm and unpretentious amidst the hustle and bustle of life. Forget the malicious gossip that English cuisine is all about bland, tasteless, and overcooked dishes. Sunday roast is the warm hug of calories that every English person venerates like a religion. This is not just a lunch, it is a psychological strategy that helps the people of the Misty Isle combat the dreadful anxiety of Monday lurking just behind. The structure of a standard Sunday roast is a marvel of arrangement. Enormous slices of roasted meat take center stage, surrounded by crispy roast potatoes and various vegetables. But the real star, the one that dominates the plate, is the Yorkshire pudding. Don't let the name pudding fool you. This is a type of fluffy cake shaped like small bowls, born with the sole mission of soaking up the rich. Glossy brown gravy poured over it like a flood. The English will sit and eat for hours until the button on their trousers begs for mercy. Then stagger onto the sofa to enjoy a delightful food coma. A Sunday without the smell of a delicious roast is like a cup of tea without milk. An unforgivable moral transgression. In every kitchen in England, the microwave may gather dust, the oven may go unused, but the electric kettle must always be battle-ready. For the English, tea is not just a drink, it is a universal remedy for all life's events. Heartbroken, make tea, just won the lottery. Making tea, aliens have landed in London. Wait a minute, let me plug in the kettle first, and then we can discuss whether to surrender or fight. The uniqueness lies in the fact that this kettle is so powerful that it can bring water from a state of stillness to a rolling boil in the blink of an eye. Thanks to its massive 230-volt electrical system, this enthusiasm also creates a meteorological phenomenon. In the national power grid known as TV pickup, as soon as a TV series ends or it's halftime during a football match, millions of Brits will simultaneously stand up and turn on their kettles, causing a sudden drop in electricity that makes power engineers break into a sweat to manage. For the British, entering a hotel room abroad without finding an electric kettle is considered a serious violation of human rights. While the entire planet has evolved to the point of carrying large industrial plastic milk containers from supermarkets, the British still persist with a habit from the Middle Ages, waiting for the milkman. About 1 million households in England still maintain this combat contract, despite the fact that the price of home-delivered milk is sometimes a few pence more expensive than in supermarkets. At the break of dawn, when even the birds have not yet stirred, the clinking of glass bottles and the soft hum of the electric vehicle engine have become the legendary soundtrack of the neighborhoods. Classic glass milk bottles, with a thick layer of creamy milk settled at the neck, are neatly placed in front of the house like a gift from the past. The English are willing to pay extra just to enjoy the feeling of opening the door to find fresh ingredients for their morning tea without having to change out of their pajamas to go outside. This is not just about buying and selling food, but a steadfast effort to preserve a bit of slow, romantic rhythm amidst a world dizzying with soulless convenience. Don't let the weather forecasts deceive you. The English don't really care whether they get caught in the rain or sunburned. For the locals, the weather is not a natural phenomenon, but rather the ultimate social ritual that breaks the silence without having to engage in overly personal or awkward conversations. You can't ask a stranger about their income or personal life, but you can absolutely complain about the 17th drizzle of the day and still be considered polite. With an average frequency of 3 to 4 conversations about the weather each day, this is how the English maintain a safe distance. You can stand with a stranger at the bus stop, grumbling about the grey sky together for 10 minutes like close friends, only to get on the bus and still not know each other's names. The weather in England changes so erratically that it becomes a national villain for everyone to collectively criticize. The national unity of the British does not lie in grand slogans, but in the murmurs. It's raining again. How annoying, isn't it? If you accidentally park over the line or forget to wash the coffee cup in the office, don't dream of a dramatic face-to-face confrontation to resolve the issue. In England, direct confrontation is considered rude, but leaving a sarcastic note is an art form. This is the holy land of passive-aggressive culture. You will soon find a small note stuck on the wall with content like, "How wonderful it is that some people believe the sink has the miraculous ability to cleanse itself. Best regards." The English worship superficial politeness to the extent that they are willing to spend 15 minutes crafting a subtly sarcastic message instead of taking 5 seconds to speak plainly to you. These notes are solid evidence that an Englishman can be waging war against you with all their fury, yet still remember to end with cheers or thanks. That's how they relieve their frustration while maintaining an air of nobility, making the other party feel deeply guilty yet unable to find any fault. If purely considered from an economic standpoint, maintaining the red phone booths is nothing short of madness. Each booth costs up to £300 just for a periodic repaint, while the era of smartphones has turned the coin-operated machines inside into dusty antiques. However, don't dare touch them. The British would rather take to the streets in protest than let these giant matchboxes disappear from sight, although in reality, no one steps inside to make a call anymore. The British have carried out a resilient revival. The red phone booths now appear in astonishing new forms, from free mini libraries, emergency phone charging stations, places to install life-saving defibrillators, to high-speed Wi-Fi hotspots. They no longer serve the purpose of communication, but have become an indispensable architectural heritage. A street in England without a red telephone box is like a cup of tea without milk. It loses its soul and properly British identity, which this nation would rather incur a loss than ever give up. England is truly a strange planet, and if you rely solely on conventional logic, you will soon find yourself in a state of utter confusion. After embarking on a long journey from the quirky hot and cold taps to the cheese-chasing escapades full of injuries on the cliffs, we suddenly realize that the English do not strive to be reasonable in the eyes of the world. They choose to be unique. These gloriously illogical rules are not barriers, but rather tightly woven ropes of history, resilience, and a characteristic dry humor. It is precisely those glorious absurdities that have transformed the land of fog into a world where, no matter how peculiar you may find it, you are always welcomed with a cup of hot tea freshly brewed in 60 seconds by the sacred electric kettle. In those brilliant absurdities, do you see anything truly worth learning? If you were allowed to bring one rule from England to apply in your country, what would you choose? Would it be a long, silent, dignified queue at the bus stop, or a red telephone booth right in the heart of the old town, turned into a mini library for the community? If you find these stories just crazy enough, yet also charming, hit like if you are also a fan of a proper afternoon tea. Don't forget to share this post to challenge your close friends to decipher the true meaning of the greeting, "You all right?" without having to recount their own health issues. Finally, subscribe now to continue this journey of exploring the most peculiar, interesting, and special corners of the world with me. Please note that this article is entirely for entertainment purposes and provides cultural information from a humorous perspective. The author will not be held responsible if you actually try to queue in London and get expelled with disapproving tuts, or if you attempt to throw yourself down a hill to chase after a cheese wheel and realize that Earth's gravity does not joke with your joints.